What happens when the lines between physical and digital blur and connection itself needs redefinition? Today's guest has been at the center of that conversation for decades, shaping the intersection of media, technology, and events long before virtual and hybrid and AI became household words. Welcome to the Events Demystified Podcast, the CEO edition. Welcome back to the Events Demystified Podcast, the podcast where we strip away the surface and explore what leadership really looks like: innovative, adaptive, and deeply human. I'm your host, Anka Platon Trifan, and today we're joined by a legend in digital media and event technology, Robin Raskin, founder and CEO of Virtual Events Group. Robin's career has spanned everything from pioneering digital journalism to building one of the leading voices in hybrid and virtual event innovation. Her work challenges how we think about connection, not as something you attend, but as something that you design. And with that, I'm so honored to welcome our guest to the show.
This episode is brought to you by True Fan Events Production. Learn more at truefanevents.com.
Robin, welcome to the show. I've been really looking forward to this. I'm so glad that you were able to make yourself available for this conversation.
Thank you for that kind introduction, and an honor to be here.
It is definitely my honor because you have been around in the event industry, in the event technology space, now in the AI space for longer than I. And I would love to get to the beginnings of it all. And I know you have been pushing this industry forward for years. And it's rare to meet someone who can blend storytelling and technology and strategy so seamlessly as you do. Before we dive into all of that, the lessons and the leadership side of things, I want to start with you. I want to hear your journey, what you stand for, and what inspired you to create eventually the Virtual Events Group. So let's start with your origin story. Where did you start? What got you into it? And where are you now?
It's so funny. There are people who know they want to be a leader, and then there are people that I call accidental leaders. It just happens. And so my story is pretty funny. So I'm going to take you way back. It's 1979, and my husband, who I had just married, brings home a Unix terminal connected to his computer at the university. And he tells me I should stop using a typewriter because all I wanted to be was a journalist and start learning what was then Unix and NROF and TROF and VI, and this is going to be easy. I don't think it's so easy. I think it's really hard, but I love him, so I give it a try, and I'm writing articles, and I send them to his university, and he brings me back a printout at night. I thought it was really hard and crazy, but I love to write, so I wrote something called How I Learned About Computers to Save Our Marriage. And it was the story of this guy who brings home a computer. I've got a baby now, and if he's going to like my baby, I better like his computer because it's got a umbilical cord. Anyhow, I write this thing and I say, as a woman, this is not just a hobby like tennis or golf. This is really important. And you will be able to work from and raise your families. And I can see this whole future. So fast forward, some magazine, it was called InfoWorld, buys it for $25 and they run it. And I get two phone calls. And one is from Bill Gates, who says, you really think there's going to be a computer on every desk and people are going to work?
Gosh.
And I said, I do. And then the other one was from a gentleman named Bill Ziff, who started Ziff Davis Publishing, and said, why don't you come write for us? And I said, I don't really know anything about technology. And he said, nobody knows anything about technology. Just show up. And they actually, God bless them, fabulous mentors, mostly men, I have to say. I was like the only woman in the room. But I was smitten with this idea that technology, and it was so primitive then, would really change our lives over the long course, change the way we work, change how we work. And so I never looked back. One thing led to another. I became the editor of PC Magazine when it was still a print magazine. Our social media was CompuServe, and we kept hearing rumblings about this internet thing happening in the back. And I said, we should be looking at this. This might be really important. So some of it is just, I think you start to develop a sense of what's going to be important and stepping back and saying, how can I be a part of this and still be true to me and myself? Like, where can I be most helpful? And it wasn't, I'm not a programmer, but I'm a really good connector, and I'm a really good seer of what's around the corner and what the future is going to look like.
I
And
love that. I love that. What I think really stood out to me, first off, you're such a pioneer in this space, right? But I think it's a pioneerism that was through line by curiosity and reinvention, right? Like you said, you build bridges between worlds, and many of those worlds didn't exist at the time. And to me, that's such a rare kind of vision. So I'm super excited to hear more about this journey. You've been part of the technology world long before most of us even had email. True. So I want to start with a fun icebreaker, because you mentioned using Unix and terms that my generation has never even heard of. So what's one piece of technology or innovation that, as you were going through this journey, completely blew up your mind the first time you saw it? That one that kind of gives you that wow moment when you realize the future has really arrived. And we're not talking about now. Let's just take a little bit more in the past during those times.
No, it's exactly. It's when you learn that you can. So I was always committed to balance in life, and I know you are also. So I would go hiking, and I would try so hard to have a normal life with my family, but I would bring, literally, wherever we went, I would bring a modem and a laptop and cables. And I would sit
and those are not small things
no,
to
and
carry
I'd sit in
around.
a phone booth putting quarters in with the laptop on my lap, trying to file a story, put the modem, you had to put the coupler in and send your story out. And then all of a sudden there came the Palm Pilot. And it was a
Oh,
little
I
handheld
remember
device,
those.
and the BlackBerry was with that. And you could actually type out enough of a story and send it wirelessly. And this was like a game changer, because all of a sudden what I lugged around, maybe 15 pounds, I could now hold in my hand. And I think that was a precursor to what is now the smartphone. And I think the smartphone, people take it for granted, but it's like the world in your pocket. It's the third party in a conversation. It's all the information that I can't remember that movie, I can't remember that book, and there's your phone. And so I think what started it, it's a progression. And you have to realize, and I think everybody should realize, that you're in the middle of history and you don't know it.
I feel like right now, right? We're in the middle of history. We don't even realize it.
Right. You may think ChatGPT, it's just here, I'm just going to talk to it. But if you realize how it was built and what is going on and what the capabilities could be, it is mind blowing. Another one of those leap forward. So there's these sort of like inflection points, and some of them are really stupid. Laser printers, like you used to hit dot and it made a lot of noise and the quality was terrible. And then all of a sudden you had silent printers that would never wore out. And so you see little by little these bits of magic. Really, you know what they always say, technology is best when it's magic, when you don't even know that it's there. And I think I've been lucky enough to see so many of them. And I think AI is clearly the next one. But we know each one is like Pandora's box, because everything they open, they also create a set of problems that are new and different and a challenge, and that you have to think ahead and plan ahead. And one of the best stories, so in our magazine, a PC magazine, we used to bring floppy disks around to the editor, to the copy editor.
You used to do big ones first before you got to the smaller ones?
The big ones, then the small ones, then CD. But you would carry them around. We called it the sneaker net. You would carry it around from person to person. So I said, okay, we're going to buy a LAN, a local area network, but we're a busy magazine. We put this thing in the closet and it sits there for months. And then one day I said, guys, we have just got to change and install this. So you install this local area network, but then you find out you have to change your whole process. Everything you did is now changed. The way it goes to the copy editor, the way the graphics get put in. So each technology change requires a process change too. And that's where we are with AI.
Yeah.
Every person's using their own 5 favorite AI tools, but your company has to figure out how these are all going to work, how you're going to credit them, who owns the IP. So many issues come up, and you got your regular day going on. You're just trying to get your work done. So I tell my staff now, when ChatGPT first came out, I said, I want everybody spending 20 minutes a day playing with AIs, just playing, and then we'll figure out how we're going to incorporate it. And now we have a process, clipping like you do, clipping things, iterating ideas, coming up with social media, creating your graphics. But I didn't want to do it willy-nilly because it would just be a mess. And I think that's the point we're at now, that people are realizing that you need an intentionality.
Yeah.
To all
You need a
these things.
process, you need a strategy, you need a workflow, because you're absolutely right. And on top of all of that, then you're also hitting the change resistance. I'm pretty sure back in the days when you changed to a LAN network and it was so easy to just take your flip that disk and take it to your person next to you to exchange information, that was like an easy habit that was formed. Also some socializing happening. You
Yeah.
spend a little bit of time there chit-chatting about your dog and your kid, and then come back to your desk to do the rest of the thing. Now you're sending the same thing over the network by yourself, not being able to socialize. I got to figure out what buttons I need to push. That's a change in itself, like emotional change, not just a technology workflow type of change. So over the years, I feel like we've gone through quite a few of those, and AI is changing, again, our mindset, our ways of doing things, but also impacting us in ways that we're still figuring out, like the way it's changing your brain chemistry, rewiring your brain, all those things. But you've seen that happening. You've seen how that happened in real time with other technologies, with other changes. So I'm curious, when because you were also talking about virtual and hybrid events long before 2020, long before it was mandatory for us to pivot, like to use that word. I want to know, what was that like watching the world suddenly pivot towards the space that you've been championing for years? How did you get to lead your team and your community through that surge of attention and expectations before it was even a reality?
Yeah. So I think you almost have to think, I like to say, I never met a media I didn't like. So I started with words. I was in publishing. And then I said to all my writers, you got to start doing some graphics, and then you have to start doing some video. And the video is a turning point because it made you more than just your words. You became a brand. And my best tech writers over the years became brands. And oh God, I'm trying to think of the famous ones. Joanna Stern, who's at the Wall Street Journal now, was one of my first employees. She's brilliant. She's an Emmy Award-winning videographer now. And each time they go, I'm like, oh gosh, it's just going to be more work. And I said, I know, but our readers and our communities, they're going to find us everywhere. When they're driving in the car, they're going to want to listen to us. When they're sitting at their computer screen, they're going to want to see us. When they want to sit back with a magazine, they're going to want to read us. And in order to grow a community, you have to be ready where your community is. And then how do you and I, we both go to events, and we know events have a lead up, but they also have an afterlife, and people forget that. Most important things that can come out of an event are what happens afterwards. The friendships you made, the business relationships you made, and how do you continue that momentum over the years. So it's why I write a newsletter I do it every 2 weeks. And just to say, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? We do a monthly meetup for the virtual events group. So it's another point of contact. So I think every company, and I don't care if you're Pepsi or if you're the Gap, you need to have various points of contact with your audience. And that is the secret. And events are no different. It can't be The event is now, and then it's over.
Events Demystified, the podcast for event professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. So in so many ways, basically, as you are leading your team through this transformation, digital transformation, right, you were already experimenting with different mediums. So when time came to get into this digital world of virtual hybrid events, it felt like you were already ready. You weren't scrambling like everyone else. And to be honest, I was exactly in the same shoes as well, because I was forced to stream my wedding. My parents couldn't come to US to be in person. So I wouldn't say forced, but I was like, I had to improvise. I had to figure out how to stream my wedding to my family back in Romania. And this was in 2009. But even way before 2009, I think it was 2005 when I was already streaming and playing with streaming in other communities and other church related events where we were trying to transmit the message to the masses. So how do you do that if you're here and they're there, especially for the diaspora, for the Romanian community, where we had some really good speakers and we wanted to transmit that, like you said, in different mediums, not just print, not just written word, but also visual and audio, to a community that's far from where you are. I really like that you took this visual aspect and audio aspect of the written word, and then you're able to meet the listener, the reader, the audience where they are. And I think that's such an important part of meeting the needs of those whom you try to serve. Anything else that you can add to that for anyone that is dabbling in their own growth? Like at this point, I feel like we've overcome a lot of challenges in the event industry, 2020, COVID, all of that. But we're another type of challenge. We're another type of growth. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think there are tips and tricks. First of all, I think there are a lot of smart people out there doing everything from YouTube videos to TikTok videos that remind, not everybody can have every skill. It's really hard. Some people were meant to be writers. Some people have what they say, a voice for radio, and that's it. They might not look great. So how do you compensate? And there are ways to compensate. If you're not a terrific speaker, I tell my colleagues and workers, the first 60 seconds is always the hardest. Practice that until you're sick of it. And if you can get through the first minute, the rest will get easier. If you're not a particularly telegenic person, you might want to use background graphics or PowerPoint slides or Slidos to involve audience engagement. So you do an inventory of your skills and then think, and there's certain science backing this up now. We know every 7 minutes, people need a change. They either need me to get up and do handstands or you to jump up and down.
Do a dance.
They need something to get them excited again, or they just space out. We now have behavioral science that we know something about how people meet and gather. We know they want an opportunity to talk to each other. That can be chat windows. So to really, we've never had so many tools. And the idea is not to pick every tool, or it looks like a ransom note, but to pick the tools that are going to work in that situation. So you may have hearts coming up, or ask somebody to pop a balloon, just things that just say, hey, wake up. And we're all learning tricks. We're all less embarrassed to say, could you turn on your camera? We'd love for you all to see each other. In the beginning of the pandemic, we tried all kinds of crazy experiments, from having movement coaches come on and teach you how to move on screen, to visiting immersive worlds where nobody knew how to navigate or to sit down or to get somewhere.
Whatever happened to those metaverses?
They're coming back. They're coming back. Sometimes for parties, sometimes for shopping. Now they have screens. We did one last week where we took the whole group into a new metaverse. And it's amazing how good people have become at understanding
I love that.
what I'm going to say, gaming metrics, contests, leaderboards. You do this the best. What are other people thinking? So you have polls. And these things have been around forever. We talked about your name, Platon. Since Plato, these things have been around forever, but now technology changes them. So you take the same things that have always worked. People always want to go around the room and tell a little bit about themselves. Now they do it with technologies. And so I think some things are going to be failures, and you can't be afraid to fail. And I do think I'm pretty practical about this 20% rule. 20% of my time is spent investigating new things. That's it. I don't have more time than that, but I will play with avatars, and I will customize my fashion looks online and just see what is out there that I am missing. As a matter of fact, you and I were laughing about this before, because this week I wrote about, I'm getting older. I know a lot of people. I can't remember who they are. Wouldn't it be nice if I could just wear a pendant and put it on you and say, oh, that's Anka. I met her at IMAX, And right now, privacy laws are getting in the way of that. But it's really doable. It's a bunch of AIs and permission from people to have them recognize you. Even when you go to events now, you're seeing those boards with hashtags, live photos from the event. So people are feeling participatory. I think they're not just attending an event, they are participating in it.
I love that. Talking about that, actually, I was just prior to us taping, I was telling Robin that I was reading her newsletter. And yes, I read her newsletter every time she sends it. I think it's very witty, very informative, and I love that. And she was talking about Devil Wears Prada. She made a reference about, which really cracked me up, because you were writing about how Miranda Priestley needing an assistant to whisper reminders. Right. And you're wondering if AI could be then Anne Hathaway that we've all been waiting for. And that's such a clever image, because it's also very real. I have a horrible memory for names, and I can remember faces, but like having someone in the back of your mind, and you're making the comparison to the Meta glasses, like Meta has been pushing really hard, so much marketing money going into their newest Meta glasses, experimenting with facial recognition and all that contextual memory. And I think the second version of their Meta glasses, and I wasn't really a big adopter. They're really clunky, they're heavy. If we wear them for a long time, your head hurts. So they're definitely trying now to make this technology easier to wear, a little less intrusive, like you're not a nerd on the street with your Meta glasses. But I want to hear from you this other perspective I want to really touch on. How do you think the leaders of today, how can they embrace the level of augmentation without really like talking about ethical and privacy rules, without crossing those type of ethical and privacy lines?
Yeah, no, that is the hardest questions. And I have to say, as I watch this industry get older, I am not always pleased with what I see. And Meta, I hate to call them out, but they're a very good example of people who would sell their grandmother for an extra eyeball on the site. And I think the algorithms that serve you the more of the content, TikTok also, the algorithms that are working to keep you addicted, basically, are really harmful. And there are other counter movements. AI for good is one, gaming for good. There are all sorts of, there's a backlash going on. There actually is a technology backlash. People are happy to meet in person again. People are happy to use, people are getting mad that more AI note takers show up at your meetings than people show up at your meetings.
True.
So people are getting
guilty as charged.
Having rules in your family, phones down at the table. I went to the theater the other night where they took your phones from you. There was a nude scene.
Oh, wow.
And they actually took your phones and put them in a bag and gave them back to you afterwards.
Okay, hold on, pause for a second. Was there any heads up that would happen, or were you all taken by surprise? Okay.
No, they actually told you with a little libretto, but it was very funny because they put it in a locked up plastic bag, and I said, somebody's going to forget to turn their sound off, and this phone is going to go off during the play. And sure enough,
it did.
And so I think people are experimenting with what their boundaries are now that you can do everything on your mobile device. You can listen to books, you can look things up, you can watch movies, you can play games. What will you do in real life? And what will you do in a hybrid life? And what will you do where the phone is an assistant? And they're making these boundaries. And there's nothing more disturbing when you're in an event giving a talk and everybody's got their head in the phone. And I don't know, 20% of them are actually listening to you, and the other 80% have checked out and doing their emails. And there's skills that you have to develop to command that situation. And sometimes it's just saying, hey, could you all put your phones down for a second and just look up here and try the different things that might work for you. Some people are using it because they need translation. So it's a
balance. It's such a balance.
Yeah. And a lot of it's like a diet. It's like exercise. It's something self-control. It's AI. It's like I could have AI write my whole newsletter, but I choose to use it as extra research and really write it in my own words and
Voice,
my own
But you also
voice.
have a talent and a skill for writing. But I think AI can definitely be a good assistant for someone that just hates writing. Writing is not their skill. Like you said, knowing your skills and then augmenting with AI to make yourself better and learn a thing or two. Because going back to your newsletter, you're talking about this inflection points. And I really like that part where you said, would you know an inflection point if it beat you? I love that line because it captures exactly where we are right now in this uneasy kind of middle ground between fear and opportunity. You're writing about Andy Jass's comments on AI and how Amazon, like so many other companies, is cutting jobs, not just because of cost, but because of how AI is reshaping how work even looks like in this new reality. So I want to take this reality now and take it a little back to the history, because there's also this line that I really love. I think it was from Indiana Jones that was saying, like, if we don't remember our history, we are doomed to repeat it. So it sounds to me like you've been through this before. You mentioned you were with PC Magazine, watching the internet displace CompuServe and AOL, and realizing that you had to retool or be basically left behind. So what does this moment feel like to you compared to that one? Is the AI shift happening faster, or does it just feel that way because we're maybe more aware now?
No, it is happening faster. The others took, even the internet, which was the fastest inflection point before this, took longer. It took a couple of years. ChatGPT came out, like
2022, October, yeah.
And the world...
We knew of it more publicly back then.
But you can't leave it to chance that everything's going to work out. You have to think, what new jobs are there going to be? Kids who graduated, I always say I feel sorry for the class of 2025 who graduated college because they didn't have AI as classes. And everybody who's hiring is looking for AI skills now. And then for a hot minute, it was prompt engineer. If you were a prompt engineer, you could get a job. If you were a coder, you could get a job. Now it's much more nuanced. If you can put agentic AIs together, you can get a job. But that's only good for so long also. So it really begs questions for humanity of what do we do? And I do think my optimistic self says anthropologists, philosophers are really going to be needed to put this all in a context, to train large language models, to keep them on the up and up, to train robotics, to train the humanists. The one thing all of this hasn't done yet is be very human. And that is our magic sauce. So we can't ever forget that. Why do people go to events? They go for the human contact, not even though the technology is there. I'm sitting on the eve of CES, which I play a big part in, the Consumer Electronics Show. People go there to see the technology, but they go there to meet each other and to hear from each other and to have these discussions about where is this going to lead us and how do I, as a company, plan for this? Do I upskill my employees? Do I have mentorship programs? I think Palantir announced they're going to start hiring high school students because college is a waste, which I don't think it is. Syracuse University announced this week that they're going to have a creator economy class. So people are reacting. Luckily, they're not just sitting still, but companies, as we know, move slowly, and they also get bloated. They hire, usually it's mid-level manager, somebody to manage the manager of the manager, and they're realizing to make the investment in AI, they're going to have to get rid of a lot of this middle management, and they're getting rid of entry-level employees, which to me is so sad, because how do you grow tomorrow's employee? And I think it's the reason when you ask people what they want to be now, it's not an astronaut anymore. It's a founder or a startup, because those are the today's moments of an outlet for your creativity. And a lot of jobs in corporations can be soul sucking. So they see this as a way to be masters of their own fate, but they should go into it knowing you can't do everything. You're not going to be a good CFO and a good CMO and a good COO. So which ones are you going to hire out? I always say, surround yourself with people who just think differently than you do and will push back on what you say, because they often really know best.
This episode is brought to you by Tree Fan Events Production. We don't just produce events, we power them with AV, AI, and a strategy. From bespoke AV production planning and management to AI workshops, courses, and keynotes, we help teams build smarter events and stronger businesses. Learn more at treefanevents.com.
I was thinking that, as you said, we have kids and we want to guide them to go on this career path and that career path. But like, for example, my dad, he was an electrician all his life and he's never feared for his job one day in his life. Yeah. So it's okay. So maybe it's the electricians, it's the plumbers, it's the landscapers that will have the most job security ever in this AI world. Because you did point out how this inflection points isn't just about the fear, but also can bring some clarity. And I want to ask you then about the reverse side of that, like this idea, as you mentioned, of human-centered economy that's emerging at the very same time. Do you see this as a true rebalance where creativity, empathy, community building actually become more valuable again? Or is just the optimist in us hoping that humans still have the edge?
So you're seeing signs. I think Amazon destroyed a lot of commerce in cities. There's no reason to go to the hardware store or a lot of the things you used to go to, but you're seeing new things being built. Coffee shops with gaming, secondhand clothing stores. I was in Brooklyn the other night for a creator opening of something called The Lighthouse. It's a space where creators can come tape and film and have access to equipment and be together. And so I think at the end of the day, we are resilient and figure out what the next step is, but it's definitely different. And even the construction workers and the plumbers and the electricians, the ones that will scale, will use AI to diagnose a problem, to say, oh my God, Joe's calling again. What did he want last time? What systems did he have? This is all giving everybody an advantage. It is pretty funny. Like you walk through cities and go, where did all the shoemakers go? There used to be a shoemaker on every corner. Now it's cheaper to buy a pair of shoes
than to fix it. I was just thinking the other day, Robin, I wish I knew how to sew, like how to fix. My kids go through clothes like crazy because they just rip them. I don't know, how do you take one hoodie today and you bring it home ripped the next day? I'm like, I wish I could just like sew things. Now, my mom, bless her heart, she tried to teach us how to sew. Didn't really last much of a skill set, but if you can buy a sewing machine, learn how to use it. I'm like, but is that the best use of my time?
Exactly. You can't do everything trying, but I'm seeing repair circles on Facebook now, like where you can go learn how to fix your bicycle, learn how to, do you want to fix all those things? So what I've learned in my old age, it's a trade-off. You can't possibly do everything. Use your time wisely, play to your skill set, but don't be afraid to try something new and mess it up. I always call myself the non-Martha Stewart because the table never looks quite right and the arrangements never look quite right.
You're a technologist, Robin. You're a technologist at heart. You can't deny that.
But so this year I put my shopping list into all the things I was going to cook into ChatGPT. I said, organize it by appetizer, soup, recipe. Give me a table over who's going to bring what what can I make in advance? I drove this thing crazy over Thanksgiving. And then maybe
As you
because,
should.
right. But I think it's almost, I grew up with encyclopedias. You went to the encyclopedia, you looked something up. Then there was the internet. You didn't have to go to the encyclopedia. First, there was CDs. You had Microsoft Encarta, if anybody remembers it, the Britannica, they were all on CDs. Then you had the internet. Now you have the phone in your pocket. I remember I was at PC Magazine and Jimmy Wales came into the office and he says, I think we're all going to write the encyclopedia together as a group and I'm going to call it Wikipedia.
My gosh.
Like I held on to my chest and this guy's got to be kidding. Like, but I trained my staff then, like any nutcase with an idea can come into the office and you should listen to them. And I called everybody else and I said, this guy thinks we're all going to write the encyclopedia together. And sure enough, it happened. So it's knowing that somebody can have a good idea and probably is the person to execute on it. And that, I think, that's a skill no AI is going to know, no robot's going to know. Humans are going to know that. And I think that is the best skill, whether you're an event planner. And you know the constraints. Event planners, you've got budgets, you've got physical surroundings, noise, all sorts of things. How can you navigate through it to do your best work?
I love
And
that. What I love about this conversation, though, Robin, is that it highlights leadership as almost like as pattern recognition through decades of walking through this space of changes. And whether it was the rise of HTML back in the PC Magazine days or the dawn of generative AI now, the real, I think, differentiator is who notices the shift, as you said, and who adapts fast enough to move with it. And that kind of brings me to something I'm always curious about when I talk to CEOs like you, because this season is about the CEO edition. And when you think about your role as a CEO now and how it's evolved through all this industry shifts, what does being a CEO mean to you today? And how did that change over time?
yeah, it's a really good question. And today it's really about mentorship. And that is definitely age related because there was a point in my life where I didn't want to listen to any of my mentors. I thought I knew better than all of them. And I think you grow into leadership. So many of the jobs I had, I would walk to them saying this mantra, you could do this. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Because you almost, it's like the Wizard of Oz. You pin the pin on the lion, say, now you have courage. Now you're a leader. And I think some people really want to be a leader from the minute they were born. I did not. I think sometimes you just find yourself, nobody else is going to do this. So I'm going to be a leader and take control of this. And I think it's so important that you feel not just empowered. I think the other thing is consistency. A leader, you can't change your mind every minute. And everybody who works for you and around you should be able to speak in your voice and your vision and your mission. And that means you must have clarity about what the things that you want. And that's often hard because you could sit there and say, I could do this or I could do this, but you can never do that to them. It's like, I've decided and we're doing this. And you know what they say, being a leader is really lonely.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of places you can go for the right answer. You can solicit opinions, but eventually the buck stops here.
And then also take ownership of whatever decision or direction you went in and own it, because like it could be a good or it could be a not so good decision. How do you come back from that, right?
That's right. And learning how to say no when it's not on your brand or your point. And I actually learned this from Martha Stewart herself, who sat with me on a plane once and said, notice I never have perfume ads in my magazine. That's not my brand. I'm not perfume. I said, my magazine was hurting at the time. I said, really? I would take ads for like condoms. I would take ads for anything. And she said,
just open the page.
That's right. And she said, that is why you'll never be great. If you don't know what you stand for, and what your brand is.
That was a hard pill to swallow, wasn't
Oh
it?
God, it was brutal. But she was so right that because so many times, I don't know how many phone calls, and I'm sure your listeners like get a phone call a minute ago. Do you want to do this for me? Do you want to do this for me? And your first impulse is say, are you paying me? Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
there's also pitching, right? This guest would be great for you. This guy. I'm like, I think there's a fine line between the right guest for the right reason, the right topic, the right audience, and then also how do we pay for this adventure? But I see podcasts is talking about that, how they take on any sponsorship whatsoever, and the topic that the audience expects to be is this, but then the ad is about completely something different.
oh
Like
yeah,
how that does that to me is like a complete no.
yeah,
Like it does not match the brand, like you said. It's like putting, this in front of my audience when we're not even anywhere close to that. Is I think it's this
yeah.
disloyalty to your audience.
And that's why I do think looking around the corner, you're going to see that changing too. Again, people are experimenting with everything from social commerce. Oh, Anka, I love that book on your shelf. I think I'd like to buy a copy of it. Click. Or you like my shirt. Click. So I think there's going to be, we'll experiment with that. Search
Mhm.
engines, as we know them, are about to change dramatically. Bye bye, like Google search bar. You're going to ask one of the LLMs a question and get a whole lot of answers. Some of them are going to be commerce related. Some of them are going to be paid at a sponsorship thing. You're seeing a lot more everything from pop-up shops to people trying to reach people in new ways with brands, people. And so I think if you watch TV now, what do you see? Pharma ads. That's 90% of what everybody else has fled, a few car ads. So it's really going to be curious to see how the advertising world, it's much more in context.
It's also, if to say, we have so many devices in our houses. Like I only mutter one word because I'm looking for, say, some fitness equipment, and the next thing you see on the TV is an ad for said thing that you literally just mentioned, that I need a roller, a massager or something, or you hear that on Alexa, or you see the ad pop up on your phone. So I think it's highly personalized at this point for sure.
Yeah.
And I know that the marketing world is definitely capitalizing on our desire to share our most intimate information via those devices with the entire world. We like it or not, it's
Yeah.
obviously happening. So even when you think about privacy, like sometimes I laugh because people would question one thing, like, I don't want ChatGPT to know this about me. I'm like, you have no idea how much of your information is out there that you already sold without you even agreeing to. It's already done at this point.
Yeah.
Should I advise you to put your medical records or financial information on the internet? Absolutely not. But just be aware that there's so much that's already being shared at this point. And you've lived through so much of this. Like when we got on the internet, I remember I'm one of the few in my generation, especially my family. I was the first on the internet. I was fifth grade. I had no business to be on the internet in fifth grade, but what did my parents know? It was like, I'm in this highly advanced program on technology in my middle school and high school. So they thought they're doing me a favor, gifting me a computer. Little did they know I was on all these Mirk channels talking to strangers around the world. But it was an eye-opener. And I have these conversations with people all the time where they blame AI that it brings so much job displacements and privacy concerns and ethical concerns. But at one point, we also have to take responsibility for our own choices, take responsibility for the things that we do, and we have control. And what I want to come back to, because again, like I said, you've lived through so many inflection points and you've managed to somehow reinvent yourself and your business every single time. When you look back, what do you think it's one pivotal decision or maybe tough lesson that you had to learn on how to lead through disruption instead of like just getting swept up in it?
So sometimes they're like painful decisions. So I saw print dying, and I kind of knew I had to do something different. So I switched completely. I went into events. I called my friends at CES. I said, you guys know me, you know my work, done stuff for you. I'd like to try doing what you're doing. And they were very gracious. And they said, sure, come build little. And they said, what do you think our problem is? And I said, I think you're just not organized by topics. So I can build digital health and high-tech retail and digital money and give your show some pieces that put the whole together. And I did that. And to me, it was just like a magazine because I could control it from cover to cover. Because after magazines collapsed, I went to Yahoo, and I actually did not love it because it wasn't a magazine. It was just a place people fell into. They didn't know who you were. They didn't know why they were there. And I felt I needed more control of my storyline. So if you know that about yourself, so then events took me to CES acquired my company. Again, I feel like the accidental CEO. They acquired my company right before the pandemic because I'd gotten pretty big and they wanted to own it. And I said, okay. And then I said, okay, what am I going to do next?
What I do now?
I think about it for a few months. And then this pandemic happened. I'm going, oh my God, the world is so hungry for contact. I'm just going to hang up this sign that says virtual events group, and we're going to help people figure this out. So we learned Zoom and Acel events and a StreamYard and Riverside and help people understand how they could still have community, maybe even better, and still get work done. What was their workflow going to be when you're building a product, but the engineer has to ship it to the next engineer to put the next piece in? It was pretty crazy. And yet I felt like we were a calming voice and the connective tissue in all of that. And now that I'm on the other side, I think life goes in peaks. I've reached this peak. My new job is to mentor people and to teach them what I've learned and hopefully shortcut some of their headaches. And I've trained, oh my God, so many people, and I've watched them go on to be so fabulous at what they do. And I take great pride in that. And I think every CEO takes great pride in that.
I love that. So after everything that we have unpacked, all these shifts happening because of AI, the human creativity, leadership through chaos, let's look ahead for a minute. What do you mentor the people, the young generation that you work with when it comes to defining what the next generation of CEO would be like? What qualities or values do you think will matter most in a world where it sounds like machines will start doing a lot of the work? There's so much word coming out of China, how they replaced like up to 60% of their workforce with robotics. We're nowhere close to that. I think I was even commenting on a post on LinkedIn about it was a European robotics manufacturing company complaining about how Europe is not fast enough at robotics in comparison to China. But like we're looking at this from this other side of the world and we're like, what are they talking about? What qualities or values still matter when humans are still needed to define what meaning looks like?
Yeah. So I think to my younger employees, first of all, I say somehow etiquette was lost in a lot of these things. I say to them, every phone call is as important as the most important person. I don't care if I can't even think if the president calls you or if some multinational calls you, some person deserves the same respect for their nutty idea, and they deserve to be listened to and can be told gently, there's no place right now, but maybe in the future. So just general etiquette's really important to me because you never know. I've had people come back that I've said no to who are now pretty well famous on their way to, and bad call on my part or wrong timing or whatever. So I think there's that. I think there's never be complacent. I think that you never do the same show twice. Yes, it was a big success. You start thinking immediately, how can I top that in a way that feels organic and not contrived? And how can you make that better? I tell them to experiment, take time. I will never scream at them for making a mistake, experimenting, trying to do something new, trying to cut time out of schedule, trying to buy a new tool. I call myself the Imelda Marcos of tools. I just buy tools like people buy shoes. Yeah, I guess go buy it and see what it's like. And just remember to put a cancel note on it if it doesn't work out.
Right.
So
And put in your calendar so you know when it's coming up.
exactly. And
All these subscriptions.
and I think just when you make your processes better, and that may include robots, not for me right now, but when you make your processes better, then you make your jobs better. And so the next jobs may be figuring out how your robots are going to move through the store and still give your salespeople a chance to really service their customers for the first time instead of stacking shirts nicely in a corner. So I think in the hospitality business, you're going to see changes. You're going to see more people spending more time with you and more VR and robots doing the stuff that kind of anybody could do. So it's just look around the corner and say, where am I going to fit into all of this? And believe that you will fit in. Everybody uses the ATM idea. There were ATMs. They thought bank cashiers were going to go out of business. There are more bank cashiers than anything. They just deal with more complicated problems that ATMs can't deal with. There are more regional banks than ever. So I believe things have a way to work out. That said, I do think there needs to be regulation and guardrails. I think there needs to be public discourse about how much AI can take of your personal things without giving you anything back. I've contributed a lot to AI's knowledge over the years. Whether they owe me a check at the end of the year or a royalty when I'm part of the answer, that shouldn't be that hard to figure out right now. And there ought to be people working on that. And there are people working on it. It's just a really hard solution because it's global. Things like digital currencies are going to have to be figured out. If I look at tomorrow, things at colonization, we will colonize Mars and the moon. And it's just a matter of how and when and with what ethics and how much we destroy this planet before we go there. So I think everything has to be done with you carve out your lane. You can go out of your lane every now and then just to see what it's like, but stick to your lane, your brand, but you can be more expansive in your brand. If you sell shoes, fine, but why can't you sell shoes that an AI created to fit your feet and you know your customer the next time and you can send them a note saying, I think your heels have just about done, or you walk with a funny gait. There's so many things, whether you're a shoe store or a hardware
You know
store.
what's funny about that, Robin? Because my husband, he's a marathon runner and he's really into running shoes. I can't even tell you how many pairs he has because at this point it's ridiculous. But actually the shoe industry, the fitness industry, when it comes to running shoes, they have nailed this to that level of, hey, by the way, you put so many miles on this shoe. It's time to get an upgrade. Here's like the upgrade. This is what you need. And they get you really well. I just dropped $200 on a pair of running shoes that I'm not even a runner. I'm like, why do I need this pair?
No, and they know your gait and they know how to improve it. And I think my most optimistic sense, not only will we live longer, but we'll live healthier. And my own mother is 94 and her connection to the world is a Kindle and her PC and Zoom, and she can handle them all, and lectures and museum visits and travel visits, all from her armchair. And yet it's a satisfying life, more so than it would have been without technology. So I think tech for good, we've lost a little sight of that. A lot of founders and a lot of CEOs are looking for quick exits. I think public companies have to look for quarterly profits and can't look long-term as they ought to. And that is a problem. So nothing that's wrong with us can't be changed by changing the incentives. So incent people to do something good in the long term rather than quarter by quarter, and you'll see different results. And I think it's only like experience as a leader that will let you do this. You can take classes. I'm not a big class person, although I think some of the classes seem really good. I just don't have the time. I learn a lot from my peers, and I learn a lot from my most junior employees that will just tell me, you're doing this like an old lady. You really ought to try and just modern it up a little bit. And I just have to suck it up and say, you might be right.
I love that. I think that's the future that I want to see as well. To wrap up everything that was said, I think it's one where technology amplifies what's best in us instead of replacing it. But talking about that, because around here we also talk a lot about being fit for events, showing up at your best mentally, physically, emotionally. Before we wrap it all up, Robin, what's your secret to staying fit for events, to kicking and screaming and being on show floor and just being your energetic self?
Yeah, no, it's really hard. Even this morning, just before talking to you, I took a hike in the beautiful cold
I
weather.
love that.
Went outside, walked in the beautiful Hudson Valley to just clear my head. I try at events, I try and walk if it's in a 5-mile range, to walk to it and clear my head out that way, to try and get outside off the show floor a few times a day and just take a deep breath. I know there's some events like IMEX where we met last that really encourage those breaks, relaxation places. And more, if you look at today's workplaces and today's events, they're designed to give you spaces to breathe a little bit. The funny story is the first time we put a nursing station in one of our events, it actually was not used as a nursing station. It was really used for reasons I won't even talk about here. And I'm going like, oh my God, what did we do? We made a hookup room on the show floor. So sometimes you try. This is a nice idea, but I think event planners are being more and more mindful of open spaces, of the feel of spaces. And then I think you're more mindful. Consume less alcohol, find different things to drink, go for the energy bar. You're seeing more choices in food to help keep your energy up. But it's no secret that every event person comes home from an event and needs a day of recuperation, right? And probably a day to go get ready. Like the day before I go out, I try and do something super relaxing, if at all possible. And being on is hard. You have to psych yourself up and just say, my impression in the next 60 seconds is going to change the way we feel about each other forever. And that goes for your audience. So each encounter, I will have a nice cup of tea after we just talk now.
I love that. I remember, especially during COVID, because we were so much on screen back then. I think I have a little bit more breather room nowadays, like even when I record podcast episodes. And because I record video and I have from the very beginning, I remember sometimes I would just have to hype myself up. I'm like, just be yourself, even if I don't feel like it. The last thing I feel is to be on camera and to be judged by random people on the internet. You need more Botox. You have too much Botox. I'm like, what the hell? Seriously? Like, I don't even consume any of those things. Like, what are you talking about? But people have opinions, right? And I'm like, I don't want to, I can't, I don't. But then you make yourself do it. And like you said, you put the energy out knowing you're going to recharge in other ways. Like for me, recharging after an hour of recording means, like you said, going outside, being by myself, being in quiet and a quiet environment that I can collect my thoughts and just have that moment of rebuilding the stamina that you might have taken. And that's true of events. A lot of people, and myself included, I call myself a introverted extrovert. I can extrovert for a limited amount of time, but most of that extroverted energy comes from a huge number of hours when I'm by myself.
But what I love about you is you teach people how to do this, how to think about fitness at events. Yeah. And the rest of the time, it's just part of leadership and fitness. Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard.
It's a decision. It's a personal decision. But like you said, in order for you to be at the top of your physical ability, even at an age that most people are bedbound, you keep up with hiking, you go out, you walk, who like in their right mind is thinking, I'm going to walk this 5 miles to IMAX after I'm going to put another 30,000 steps on the show floor, right? They're thinking, no, how can I make the minimal amount of Uber me to my trade show booth if you can, because I don't want to put any more additional time into feeling physical, being physical if I don't need to.
And the thing is, I think it's not just about us, but it's about our staffs that you say to them, I will never yell at you for taking an hour out in the day to exercise
Yeah,
because you will bring a better self to me. Do I wish you would do it
love
at
that.
6 in the morning instead of 10 in the morning? Yeah, but if you got to do it. So I really try to be super mindful that they have lives and in many cases are juggling families with, my kids are older, families with young kids. And no, I remember in my heyday, I would wear leotards under my suits and I would literally like Superman strip, go to the gym over lunch, do a little shower bath in the sink, and then go back to the office. It was demented, but I think it kept my best self in the office. And if I didn't do it, I would feel sluggish.
Yeah. Especially come that post the perennial deep after the lunch you just had, either a coffee pick me up or maybe just some movement. And I'll always choose movement as far as I'm concerned, because I know I'll feel so much better. Even if in the moment I'm like, I don't feel like doing this, I know how much better I feel afterwards. So Robin, this has been such a rich conversation and we've covered so much. For anyone listening and who wants to stay ahead of the curve, where can they connect with you or subscribe to your brilliant newsletter? Where are the places where you hang these days?
So the best place to find out where I'll be all the time is to go to virtualeventsgroup.org, O-R-G, and sign up for the newsletter. And take a look at, we always call out the things we're doing right now. So we contract out to various events companies and do things for them. And so we're all over the place. We talk about wearables, health, retail, hospitality, creators. So we have a pretty wide range. And if we can help you, that's what we're here for. That's what we like to do.
I love that. That's a wrap on the CEO edition of Events Demystified. Robin, thank you for being such a powerful voice for innovation and connection in our industry. And for everyone that's listening, remember, technology doesn't replace humanity. It reveals new ways to express it. And the future belongs to those willing to keep evolving. So till next time, stay curious, stay adaptable, and stay fit for events. Bye. Thanks for tuning into the CEO edition of the Events Demystified podcast.